Hi everyone, welcome to Everyday God. This is episode 3. We have been talking about just different ways and parts of my story where I encountered God and what that looked like, how He spoke to me, and how that has contributed to how I'm living life now. So in the previous episode, I was telling a story that I coined, the one where He introduced Himself as Father. And I told the story about how, actually, I'm not gonna tell you, go back and watch it. I'll link it somewhere here for you. But yeah, so today I just wanted to pick up on the one where He gave me courage. The one where God gave me courage. So I'll just pick up from where I left off. So when my dad passed on, I still had to do 4 years of school. And what I did is I did a mix of work and school. So over the span of the 4 years, I just had like now in hindsight, it's favor. But at the time, it just looked like I just had a really good sense of finding well-paying jobs that allowed me to work and study at the same time. And then somehow I just had the bandwidth to miss class and catch up, even though I was taking some statistics units. And then again, in hindsight, I realized God had surrounded me with very, very supportive friendships. But at the time, it just looked like I was part of a clique that was willing to study with me after I came and I had missed class. They were willing to catch me up. So somehow all those provisions were there. But I think that was a real pain point is that I needed daily bread. And sometimes when I was not working, then that meant I didn't have enough to live off on. But I was in a nice relationship with a guy from my home neighborhood, actually, not from my neighborhood. I was gonna say hometown, but from my neighborhood. We had met when we were young, and we had started dating, I think, when I was 18. He was my first Valentine's. Our parents knew each other. My grandma knew him. It just felt like one of those forever kind of loves. And then we were also part of a dance team. I was a dancer. We used to dance. We even we did the groove party one time. Like we were dancing at the biggest stage in Kenya. But when my dad passed on, I didn't have the money to do all that traveling, go for practice. Like it's just a lot of money. And so I would start missing practices, and eventually they decided to let me go. Sad. I was the only girl and they decided to let me go. Anyway, so this relationship had been going on for maybe 3 years, and the thing was, he was very supportive. He was a very, very, very supportive boyfriend, and he came from a very stable home, and so he would have extra money. And so at times he would, chip in. He'd be like, okay, it's the weekend, you don't have enough money for meals for the whole weekend, so he'd send me some money. He was just very supportive. But then the thing is, when you're young and foolish, there's the idea of, I'm gonna marry this person. Have I not dated them for 3 years? Of course they're my husband, of course I'm their wife. And so there was sort of like an underlying unstated expectation for us to get married at some point, of course when we finish school, right? And so there was just no way that I would leave. But in my third year of university, I met some friends and they introduced me to a community called The Journey. And The Journey was a community of born-again Christians, but they were just not very religious, is the word. So they used to have a hangout every Friday where they would serve tea and mandazis, and there'd be a DJ and there'd be dancing, and it was so cool. And they'd have sleepovers and movies and games, and I was just like, wow, if this is the Christianity that is happening, I'm in. It wasn't very Christian Union-y. I just felt like I was not a Christian Union girl. I just didn't fit in with the aesthetic there. But with these guys, they were absolutely amazing. So I started hanging out with people from the journey, and it was so nice. I did a leadership course that they had. It was fun for like 12 weeks. And so what happened is I started changing. I started changing without realizing I'm changing. And he realized I was changing. My language was changing. The people I'm hanging out with are changing. I don't want to go out anymore on Fridays. I want to go to the Journey Friday experience. I just was changing, and he was not very happy with it. And so I remember we started having small tiffs here and there, especially because some of my friends were guys. And on introduction to the journey, I was very extroverted then. I don't know about now. I was very extroverted then, so I just got along with everyone. Like I jumped in and I fit in, and I became someone who was there almost from like day one. And so I remember I invited him to the journey to come and meet people and maybe become friends as well, take God seriously. And he came and he did not like it. He didn't like it. He didn't like how people were saying hi to me. There are just like underlying insecurities in it. And so he said he doesn't want to be a part of it. And in that moment, I chose God. I was like, I really like that I'm pursuing my relationship with God. I really like the person I'm becoming with these people. So I feel like it's okay. We can keep dating, but I'm still gonna come to the journey. I'm still gonna hang out with them. So we were in different campuses. It didn't help the matter. So I remember this progressed and progressed and progressed until one day we had broken up so many times and we kept getting back together for different reasons. But I think it was the idea of, I've put in so much time into this relationship, I'm not gonna waste it. I need to make it work. And then internally, there was always such a big fear of letting go. Like, who will I become? People have associated me with him for so long. What does it look on the other side, being single and things like that? But it was becoming bad. We'd have really terrible fights. In fact, I'm going to say this. Please don't judge me. But I think I realized it wasn't good for me when one time we were in an argument and I slapped him. I did it. I'm the I'm the perpetrator of gender-based violence. It's not funny. It's that I'm the one who did it. That's funny. But I think in that moment I caught myself and I was like, whoa, who is this person that I'm becoming? Because when we start this, it will not stop. And I think many of us have grown up in households where we've seen like violence in marriages, and it was something we talk about in high school. I was like, if we start, it's just gonna be a downward trajectory. So I think in my mind I started working out, how will I live, and at the moment it seemed impossible. To make matters worse, I'm really snitching on myself. It wasn't the plan. To make matters worse, that semester I didn't get a hostel, and my housemate had just graduated, so I'd had to move back home. And so I was doing a daily commute from home to all the way to Kenyatta University, and it was so tiring. By the end of the week I was so tired. So he had suggested that I can crash at his house sometimes. I said, sure, thank you. And then to add another layer is, because there's this dynamic of, our relationship is solid, he would then, when he wakes up to go to class, he'd actually leave me some money to go to school. Like, he was funding my lifestyle in 2013, maybe 2014. Anyway, so all these things were complicating the relationship, because then, since he was doing these things that are characteristic of a husband, he was expecting for me to do things that were characteristic of a wife, like cook or fold clothes or whatever. And I was like, this is not my house. I just come here sometimes. I'm not doing any of that. And so one time I came home late from the Journey Friday experience. It used to end like at midnight. So I came home late, maybe like at 1 a.m. to his house. And then we just started arguing, just an argument for why were you there, those kind of things that don't make sense when you're that age. And I remember in my mind, I was just like, this is over. But there was a fear within me that says, no, how will you attend class? You'll go back to that commute where sometimes you don't even have money to go to class, and just let the semester end and then you can break up with him. But I remember the next day we woke up and we were still upset at each other. And then he started throwing words at me. But a word that triggered me was, I think he said, please leave my house, or something like that. And this is, keep in mind, my dad has just died. I feel a bit defenseless when life happens to me. And so in this moment he said, please leave my house. It just triggered a part of me where I remembered I come from a house. I come from a home. And that home, they would never say, leave my father would have never opened his mouth to say to me, leave my house. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave. And so I think because we had this pattern of breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together, even I expected we'll probably get back together after the weekend. But in that moment, I felt such a courage rise up in my spirit, and I said, I'm leaving. I said, I'm leaving. I picked up my things. I didn't even take everything. I just took my phone, my shoes. I dressed, I left. And let me tell you, this one, I really felt it was different. Like I just felt courage rise up inside of me and the fear dissipate. And I walked out and I went home. I went home and I'd not told my mom where I was spending some of the nights. She knew I was spending it with a friend, but I think her mother's intuition maybe knows. So when I went home, she was quite happy. She was like, yeah, here's your bed. Your bedroom is still where you left it. We'll figure out how to get you to class on time. Don't worry, and things like that. So a week passed, not talking to each other. Then week 2, he sent me a text message saying, I'm sorry. And I think the courage was still there. I was like, a text message? You can't even call to apologize. You're sending a text message. I'm not coming back. A month passed. He's like, are you not going to respond to me? No. 2 months, 3 months, literally, guys, I left. And I was wowed by that courage. I was like, God, did you just give me courage to leave? Did you back up my leaving? And I could feel God saying, yes, like that's come to an end. You're leaving and you're not going back. And so I remember I went to pick up my things almost a year later. And because I had a key and I went when he wasn't there. But I couldn't believe I was free because I had friends who had started dating around the same time. And the relationships were crap. I'm not going to lie. No cap. They were crap, but they never left because there was just a hold. I can't even explain it. I don't know if it's I don't know what it was, but for me, seeing myself break out of that pattern was literally God. He gave me the courage. So this story is the one where he gave me courage, and he didn't have to say a word to me. It was an internal strengthening. And I think sometimes we can miss that when we are perhaps in a situation that is difficult, or a situation where we need help, and God is our help. He is our refuge in times of trouble, and we fail to recognize when he becomes a refuge. So in that moment, God became a refuge. I could run to him, and I found solace and I found courage to not go back, to leave where I needed to leave and to step out. And so maybe that's something for you and I to reflect on. Where have you experienced God as courage, as refuge, as salvation, in spaces where by your own strength you wouldn't have done it? In fact, you have proven over time that you can't do it by yourself. Or are you in a situation where in this moment you need God to step in, and that would look like courage, and maybe to just ask him to give you that courage to step out and to trust him and to let the fear break off of you. And so I think even that's my prayer, that if you're listening and you're in a space where you feel like this cycle has kept on repeating itself and you just can't help, and you can't help yourself get out of it, that God would give you the courage to stop and step out of that cycle, step out of that pattern that is not godly. Yeah. See you.